Hi everyone. As the war in Ukraine continues, the humanitarian crisis is worsening. As brutal campaigns of indiscriminate bombing have hit civilians, shelters, churches, schools, aid workers are seeing increasing numbers of wounded refugees. Unfortunately, these additional assaults are happening as the initial waves of global humanitarian support are starting to wane. As a result, medical supplies for Ukraine are becoming harder and harder to source in Europe. For this reason, I've made the decision to travel to the bordering country of Romania to help by delivering medical supplies to organizations who are facing scarcity of these life-saving supplies. Here's a message from my friend in Romania.
Hi, Darren. One thing I'm wondering if you could help with, even from now, please let me know if you feel that this is something that fits with you. We need to set up deep supply chains for some of the key humanitarian and medical goods to Ukraine. This is especially around medicine, sourcing things like IFAKs, which are emergency medical equipment, not the type that you would use, for example, in a car or in an office, but for battlefield conditions, which means they need to have burn protection materials. They need to have a whole range of things that are specific for the context in Ukraine right now. We have a list of all of these. We've already been providing them, but they're actually fairly hard to find in sufficient numbers. So one thing would be to see, could you already begin engaging and perhaps help play a supporting role, identifying providers of some types of equipment and support?
While there, I will also provide as much in-person logistics support as I can. Although I will self-fund all of my travel expenses, I'm raising money to help provide these life-saving IFAK medical kits, medicines, and other first aid supplies to relief organizations and first responders in Romania. I will personally deliver these immediate medical supplies to Romania, where they will be taken to Ukraine through a coalition of organizations, all addressing the humanitarian needs in Ukraine. I humbly ask that you consider a donation to this GoFundMe campaign if you're able to do so. If you're unable to help financially, you can also help by raising awareness about this campaign and sharing it with your friends, family, and on your social media channels. 100% of the funds received will be used to support the Ukrainian people in need, and I will provide donors with continual updates showing how these medical supplies are procured, transported, and delivered to aid organizations helping in Ukraine. Here's my friend Kai again.
What we do is we also track and trace the entire process so people can see exactly what they're involved in, how they're contributing, where the aid is going, and when it's arriving, so that they still really feel part of it. But we're trying to use this more agile approach so that it responds better to the actual needs in Ukraine now.
Any additional money raised will go towards the purchase of ambulances that will be used to serve in Ukraine.
But the other item we're looking at is to get donations for ambulances. Now, the best is if we can get financial donations or crowdfunding, which allow the purchasing of ambulances here, because we can get them much faster, but we can even look at other items. As much as possible, we're trying to move away from the 1980s humanitarian aid where people would send shipments of goods, because it both takes much longer, costs more, and has more environmental impact. So what we're looking is, whenever possible, getting the donations as financial contributions so that we can then make the purchases as close as possible to their final destination in Ukraine, so that we also speed up the provision of aid as much as possible.
Some of you may be wondering how I've become involved in this humanitarian relief effort and how your donations will be used. Well, because I traveled to Romania 3 times in the past, many of the hostel management, hostel jobs, and hostel SNAP programmers are located in Romania. I've become connected with an organization called Peace Action Training and Research Institute of Romania, PATRIR for short. PATRIR is coordinating with all levels of actors in Ukraine. They have a Ukraine contact team that is in touch with them 24/7, and from which they come to understand the immediate humanitarian needs in Ukraine. Their work is then to source these needs, covering humanitarian goods, non-perishable food supplies, and especially medicines, to get them into Ukraine directly. They're transporting these supplies to critical areas in Ukraine, and from there, they're also used directly and smuggled further into cities that are currently under siege. Patria is also working to support shelters in Ukraine. A lot of attention has been on refugees from Ukraine coming to neighboring countries like Romania, approximately 3 million now. There are far, far more refugees who are internally displaced inside Ukraine. Figures from the government and NGOs suggest that the number of refugees internally displaced may be over 8 million. This is bringing in critical stress on cities and towns that were not designed to handle this many people. Additionally, Russian armed forces have been targeting food factories, pharmaceutical factories, and crippling critical infrastructure, making it harder and harder for Ukraine to support itself. For this reason, Patria is supporting these shelters in Ukraine. If you have any questions about this charitable campaign, please feel free to reach out to me personally. Thanks again for your financial support or by raising awareness about this important issue.